Well, this month we started out with Pluralism Sunday on the first Sunday of May, and we're celebrating the religious pluralism and wonderful diversity in this country. And our topic today is instant karma. And I want to thank Billy and Kelly. I thought of the title to this, and I shot an email off to Billy this week and just said, "Do you happen to know Instant Karma by John Lennon?" And I didn't hear anything back, and then they come walking in this morning and they said, "Yeah, we went ahead and learned it for you." So that was special. I really appreciated that. It was so much fun to have that up front. Really appreciate you guys doing that. Yeah, you remember that song, John Lennon, "Instant Karma's Gonna Get You, It's Gonna Knock You Right on the Head." You know, he was a wise and witty singer and songwriter. And it really makes perfect sense that John Lennon would write a song about karma, because he was kind of a student of Eastern religions, right? He was a student of Buddhism, he was a student of Hinduism, and those are known as the karmic religions. Notice I said karmic, not comic. But of course, as you all know, I can't resist a good comic or two. I happened to come across this one. There's an angel sitting behind a desk, and on the desk is a sign that says Reincarnation Desk. And there's a guy standing in front of the reincarnation desk, and the angel is saying to him, "There's a pretty long waiting list for Episcopalians, but I can get you into a Hindu right away." I think the message there is that there's probably not a lot of Episcopalians that believe in reincarnation, right? And then I came across this one for Buddhism. You ever seen those beautiful Zen gardens, those sand gardens with the beautiful things in them? Of course, you know, you're not born knowing how to do that. You have to go to Zen garden school. So this is a comic showing us the first day of Zen garden school. And you know, you don't need any words, but my favorite two, flip it to the next one. My favorite two are these two guys. You got the monk, you got the monk doing a snow angel in the sand. And then you got another monk who's stepping on his rake and getting smacked in the face. And there's the Roshi off to the side doing a face palm in the face of all of this. So, okay, enough comics. Back to the karmic religions. Karma. It's a Sanskrit word that literally means action, or more precisely, it means the force that's generated by a person's actions. Think of it like dropping a pebble into a perfectly still pond. I'm sure we've all done that as kids, and even as adults, it's still fascinating to do that. You drop the pebble into the pond, and the ripples move out. And sometimes they reach all the way to the shore, and then they get reflected and they bounce back to the middle. You know, in this part of the world, we have a saying that goes, "What goes around comes around." Kind of the way that we tend to express karma. In the ancient Buddhist and Hindu traditions, they have this idea of reincarnation, and in the ancient traditions, they believe that it's actually possible to be reborn as an insect or an animal, depending on how you behave in this life, depending on your karma, the action that's generated by your life. Yeah, actually can be reborn as an insect or an animal. That's something to consider for those of you who believe in reincarnation. And I have to say that even though I don't believe in reincarnation, there is a certain amount of satisfaction in the thought of some people coming back as an insect, maybe, or a rodent, right? You know, I have to confess, there's something appealing about that. But beyond the question of reincarnation, karma is really about the law of cause and effect, and that's what we call it in Unity. The law of cause and effect. Actions have consequences. And when we take the action, we have to take responsibility for the consequence. If we refuse to take responsibility for the consequences of our actions, well, the law of cause and effect is going to make sure that we do, whether we like it or not, and sometimes whether we're even aware of it or not. Now, too often, there's this tendency to look at karma only as something that produces remote consequences, way down the line, off into the distant future. And that's a mistake. Cause and effect can be separated by large spans of time, but the thing we don't want to lose sight of is this important truth. At the level of consciousness, cause and effect are not separated by time. At the level of consciousness, we experience the full force of our thoughts, words, and actions the very moment that we think, say, or do them. Think about what happens when you have angry or fearful thoughts, or words, or actions in response to those things. Angry and fearful thoughts produce immediate physical reactions. Elevated heart rate, blood pressure goes up. Something called cortisol gets released into the bloodstream, which is good because it gets us moving, it gets the fight or flight reaction going, but too much of it over too long of a period of time can be toxic. And those are just the physical effects. Think for a moment about the other things that can happen when we indulge angry and fearful thoughts. They reinforce the beliefs that give rise to those things. And that makes it perhaps easier and maybe even inevitable that we're going to have even more angry or fearful thoughts and feelings. It turns into a self-reinforcing feedback loop, which really points up the importance of doing everything we can do within our power to stay on top of our thoughts and our feelings and things like that. Now, fear and anger, those are the negative aspects, but there's a positive side to this too, because we also experience the immediate effects of our thoughts, words, and actions that are based on things like love and gratitude and compassion. Physically, we know that there's this thing called the relaxation effect. The blood pressure goes down, the heart rate goes down, the body produces healing endorphins. They feel good too. Cultivating thoughts of love and gratitude and compassion will reinforce the beliefs and the perceptions that give rise to them. Things like our own inherent self-worth, goodness, abundance, the order and creativity of spirit, all of those things expressing through us and as others. So just like we want to be on guard against thoughts of anger and fear, we also want to be able to put something positive in their place. So John Lennon, he wasn't just a great songwriter, he was a great philosopher and actually a great metaphysician too. He really understood that karma is indeed instant. We experience the full force and effect of our thoughts, words, and actions instantly. And then they can go on, like the ripples in a pond, to produce other effects. We set the cause in motion. We have to take responsibility for what happens, but the thing that's kind of hard to accept is that we don't always control exactly what the ripples are going to do. We have to let it go. And that can be pretty hard for us to accept. Because, well, we like to think that we can control things, right? But we have to learn to let it go. How often do you hear the phrase, good karma or bad karma? We say, oh, that's good karma. No, that's bad karma. Well, in reality, there's no such thing as good karma or bad karma. There is just karma, action, cause, and effect. When we think about karma in terms of good and bad, what we're actually doing is we're setting up a subtle form of materialism. We can call it spiritual materialism. If we do good things because we think it's going to produce a future reward, well, I'm practicing spiritual materialism. And it's also metaphysical malpractice because, as we just learned, cause and effect at the level of consciousness are instantaneous. They're not separated by time. And we can flip that around to the negative side too. If I avoid doing harmful actions because I'm afraid of bad karma, what I'm actually doing is setting up a subtle form of materialism. More spiritual materialism. more metaphysical malpractice. Our motivation sets the tone for our consciousness. If the only reason that I refrain from doing bad things is because I'm afraid of future punishment, well, that's not going to work very well. We try to do what is true, good, and beautiful for the sake of doing those things. We do it in this moment based on our present awareness of what is necessary right here and right now, with no thought of a gaining motive for ourselves. Now, that's not to say that we get to ignore the ripples. That's not to say that we get to ignore the potential effect of our action. Instant karma doesn't give us an excuse for not paying attention. It doesn't give us an excuse for being short-sighted and ignoring the big picture. But at the same time, we need to be humble and a little bit cautious, because the ego likes us to indulge in the illusion of being in control of everything and everyone. And given its druthers, the ego will try to control everything and everyone. In fact, we can call the ego the controller. That's a good word to use for it. The controller is more than happy to take responsibility for the consequences of action, but only if it likes the consequences. The negative stuff, oh, that's not my problem. That's not what I intended. I'm not responsible for that stuff. Karma tells us that we need to try to do the best that we can in the moment. We stay focused on the true, the good, and the beautiful. We let that inform our actions with the understanding that things don't always go according to plan. We can't always control that. But what we can do when things go wrong is to learn and maybe make an adjustment. Maybe we need to put a different action into motion. And that requires humility, because we have to admit sometimes that our original action, as good as it may have seemed at the time, as good as we may have intended it, may not have been for the highest and best of everyone concerned. You ever said to yourself, that seemed like a good idea at the time? We intended the best, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. Humility and caution, because we don't always know. One of my favorite TV shows over the years was one called Northern Exposure. I don't know if any of you used to watch that. It was about some characters in a fictional town up in Alaska. And one of the main characters is a Native American woman named Marilyn. Now, she didn't talk much, but when she did, it was usually a real pearl of wisdom. And in one of the episodes, she was talking to a friend of hers, another Native American named Ed, who got struck by lightning. All right? And he's trying to figure out whether it was good or whether it was bad, whether it was lucky or unlucky. He's trying to figure out, well, am I being punished for something I did? Or is the universe trying to tell me that I'm being saved for some greater purpose? And he's thinking about it so hard that it's giving him a headache. So he goes to Marilyn for a little advice. And Marilyn tells him a story. She says, "My uncle once told me about a warrior who had a fine stallion. Everybody said how lucky he was to have such a horse. Maybe," he said, "one day the stallion ran off. The people said the warrior was unlucky. Maybe," he said, "the next day the stallion returned leading a string of fine ponies. The people said it was very lucky. Maybe," the warrior said. "Later the warrior's son was thrown from one of the ponies and broke his leg. The people said it was unlucky. What did the warrior say? Maybe. The next week, the chief led a war party against another tribe, and many young men were killed. But because of his broken leg, the warrior's son was left behind, and so was spared." At the level of consciousness, cause and effect are instant. We always reap exactly what we sow at the level of consciousness. Every thought, every word, every action has an immediate effect. But out in the physical world, as time and distance begin to expand, well, we can't always be so certain about exactly what will unfold and when it will unfold. Cause and effect in the physical world can be unpredictable, and we have to learn how to say, maybe. There's a Unity class that's based on a set of books by Richard and Mary Alice Jaffola. It's called The Quest, and in chapter 8 they talk about cause and effect, and I really love the analogy that they draw. They say that when it comes to living our lives, life is more like a sailboat race than a bowling match. Okay? Think about it. When you go bowling, once you roll that ball and it's out of your hand, it's going to do what it's going to do, and there is nothing you can do to control the outcome. How many bowlers? Anybody who's ever been bowling? You ever gone bowling? You ever let that ball go? It's out of your hand, then you ever do this? You know, come on, they're giving a little body English. It's not going where you want it to go. I've never seen that work. We try, but, the end result, the karmic action of the way you threw that ball is unavoidable. However, in human life, it's like a sailboat race. Sailboat racing is different. The goal is to get from point A to point B in the shortest time possible. But the great thing about it is that every step of the way, you can always change course. You can make constant adjustments, course corrections. If you're dissatisfied with the way things are going, you put a new cause into motion. If we're dissatisfied with the way something is going in our life, we put a new cause into motion. And the really good news is that we don't have to wait to experience the dissatisfaction before we take the corrective measures. Sometimes that happens. It serves as a reminder. But if we're really going to see ourselves as empowered beings, we can take responsibility and we can make the change as soon as we see something that might be a potential problem for us, that we're not on course. I've learned to trust karma. I've learned to trust karma and not worry too much about the things that I can't control. And this is really valuable when it comes to things that other people do that bug me or that I think are wrong. Those kind of things that I might be inclined to judge. I can rest assured that at the level of consciousness, they are reaping exactly what they're sowing, and I may never know exactly what that is, but I trust karma to work because the lesson is playing out and the universe is unfolding as it should, and that leads to a lot less worry and stress in my life. So trusting karma means I don't have to give myself a headache like Ed trying to figure out every little thing that's happening. I just stay cautious, humble, learn how to say maybe, be ready to put a new cause into motion if I don't like the results that I'm experiencing. And I can guarantee that every single one of us here is going to have a chance to experience the way this unfolds. So why wait? Start now. See you next week.